Max Verstappen has just delivered a Las Vegas performance so overwhelming that Laurent Mekies admitted he was left completely stunned as he watched the Red Bull RB21 unleash a level of pace no rival team expected. At the same time, the FIA dropped a bombshell on the paddock when it announced that both Norris and Piastri had been disqualified for microscopic plank were measured with precision down to 1/1000th of a millimeter, turning McLaren's entire weekend into a disaster. This ruling not only erased their points, it opened the championship door wide for Verstappen, whose flawless drive and relentless rhythm under the Las Vegas lights transformed the title fight in a single night. And before we uncover why Mekies called Verstappen's pace unbelievable, make sure you subscribe so you do not miss the next shocking chapter of a championship that is now changing faster than any team can react. The Las Vegas Grand Prix became the epicenter of the championship drama the moment the FIA released its official inspection findings, confirming that both McLaren cars had failed the mandatory plank thickness regulation. According to the report, the underside of Piastri's car produced readings of 8.96, 8.74 and 8.90, while Norris's car recorded 8.88 and 8.93. These values sat below the 9mm minimum required by Article 3.5.9. Because the FIA used equipment calibrated to detect variations as small as 1/1000th of a millimeter, the readings were considered indisputable and legally binding. The inspection process was repeated several times in the presence of 3 McLaren representatives, and each measurement produced identical results. The consistency of the numbers removed any possibility of a procedural mistake. From that moment, the regulation left no room for interpretation. A car that finishes the race with a plank below the legal thickness must be disqualified. No appeal, no adjustment, and no contextual argument can modify the sanction. The same rule had already been applied earlier in the season, and the FIA made clear that identical cases demand identical rulings. As McLaren absorbed the severity of the situation, Verstappen was celebrating one of the most dominant performances of the season. His start defined the early phase of the race when Norris defended aggressively into the first corner and missed the entry of turn 1 by arriving too fast on the outside line. That single miscalculation opened the inside trajectory for Verstappen, who managed the corner perfectly and took the lead before the field reached the second braking zone. The report confirms that the Red Bull RB21 immediately felt stable and predictable even as temperatures dropped below 15 degrees and grip became more difficult to manage. From that moment, Verstappen controlled every lap with a rhythm that surprised even experienced figures on the Ferrari pit wall. Mekies described that the grip of the Red Bull tires held longer than his engineers had forecast, and that Verstappen's pace remained remarkably consistent throughout the opening stint. While other cars struggled with wake turbulence, low temperatures, and unpredictable balance, Verstappen kept the RB21 inside its operating window. He delivered a calculated approach, lifting in the final corners to protect his tires while maintaining a margin that no rival could match. The emotional whiplash inside McLaren grew heavier when the FIA recalculated the championship standings. Without the disqualification, Norris would have expanded his total to 408 points, while Piastri would have climbed comfortably into a clear second place. Instead, the removal of both results dropped Norris to 390 points, while both Piastri and Verstappen closed to 366. What should have been a night of consolidation became the moment the title fight reopened entirely. The championship that once appeared firmly controlled by Norris now sat on the smallest margin imaginable. The core problem that detonated the Las Vegas weekend emerged the moment the FIA delivered its exact measurements from the underside of both McLaren cars. According to the official document, the plank beneath every Formula One car must retain a legal minimum thickness of 9 mm across the reference positions defined in the technical regulations. When the FIA inspected Piastri's chassis, they recorded values of 8.96, 8.74 and 8.90. These figures fell below the threshold and were verified using equipment calibrated to 1/1000th of a millimeter. That level of accuracy meant McLaren could not argue measurement uncertainty or procedural inconsistency. The car was unquestionably illegal according to the rulebook. The situation intensified when Norris's car produced similar values, showing 8.88 and 8.93. The investigators repeated the readings several times and the numbers did not shift even a fraction. With identical violations found on both cars, the stewards did not have the authority to consider intent or circumstance. The rule does not evaluate human decisions. It evaluates the thickness of the plank and nothing else. Once the FIA confirmed that the measurements remained below 9 mm in every inspection cycle, the disqualification of both drivers was automatic. This precision-based ruling left the McLaren garage stunned because the team had expected a strong points haul rather than a complete collapse. The shock became even greater when the points table was recalculated. Norris had finished second on the road and Piastri fourth. These two results would have delivered 21 points that McLaren considered essential for their championship campaign. Instead, the ruling removed their entire contribution. The document clarifies that if the results had been upheld, Norris would have held 408 points, leaving Verstappen 30 points behind and Piastri further back. After the penalty, however, Norris dropped to 390 while both Piastri and Verstappen fell into a tie at 366. This shift turned what should have been a controlled championship march into a three-way pressure battle with minimal margin for error. At the same moment the FIA decision erased McLaren from the standings. Verstappen had just executed one of his most dominant drives of the season. According to the race analysis, he capitalized on Norris's misjudgment into turn 1 and seized control of the Grand Prix within seconds. Once in clean air, the Red Bull RB21 delivered a rhythm that surprised even Laurent Mekies. Verstappen maintained tire grip in cold conditions that sat below 15 degrees and kept the car inside its narrow operating window with remarkable consistency. This gave him complete authority over the race pace, which the Ferrari pit wall described as stronger than expected. The contrast between Verstappen's precision and McLaren's technical miscalculation defined the problem that now confronted the championship. Red Bull extracted full performance from every lap of the Las Vegas circuit, while McLaren unknowingly operated at a ride height that left no margin for plank protection across the race distance. Stella later argued that porpoising bumps in contact may have contributed to the wear, but the FIA stressed that the rule cannot interpret intention or external factors. The outcome is determined solely by the measurement. Verstappen gained momentum not because of controversy but because his car remained fully compliant while running at a pace that stunned rival teams. This is where the problem becomes truly significant for the final rounds of the season. McLaren lost every point scored in Las Vegas, while Verstappen left the weekend with maximum confidence from a victory built on clean execution. The FIA documents show that the plank wear violation was microscopic yet decisive. At the same time, the race analysis shows Verstappen built his win from decisive early positioning and relentless rhythm. These two realities collided to reshape the championship. McLaren suffered the most punishing penalty available, while Verstappen delivered a performance that even Mekies described as stronger than anticipated. Together they created a turning point that will define the remainder of the title fight. The core engineering challenge exposed in Las Vegas was the razor-thin margin that separates legal ride height from catastrophic plank wear. The FIA measurements showed that Piastri's plank dropped to 8.74 mm at its lowest recorded point, while Norris reached 8.88. These margins were hundreds of times smaller than the thickness of a credit card, yet the regulations treat them as decisive boundaries. McLaren believed their ride height settings were safe across the full race distance, but the combination of fuel load, circuit bumps, and aerodynamic load exposed a miscalculation that could not be corrected once the car left the garage. In Formula One engineering, a single millimeter is enormous, and a single tenth of a millimeter is unforgiving. Engineers across the paddock pointed out that Las Vegas is one of the most deceptive circuits for ride height prediction. Long straights cause cars to bottom out under maximum speed, while the cold night temperatures decrease tire pressure and bring the floor closer to the ground. Stella later explained that the team did not have enough uninterrupted practice time to gather accurate compression data due to drainage repairs and disrupted sessions. As a result, McLaren calculated their reference height with incomplete information. In an environment where floors operate within millimeters of the asphalt, incomplete data becomes a silent threat that only reveals itself in the post-race inspection room. Red Bull handled this engineering challenge with remarkable precision during the same weekend. The race analysis highlights how the RB21 achieved stability through the opening lap while other cars struggled with cold tires. Verstappen managed to maintain tire temperature in air that followed a rapid cooldown once the sun set. This stability allowed Red Bull to maintain an optimal ride height window, which protected the plank while sustaining aerodynamic load. It was this combination of mechanical balance and aerodynamic consistency that gave Verstappen such a powerful pace, and it is the reason Laurent Mekies admitted he did not expect the RB21 to perform so strongly under such demanding conditions. From a technical perspective, the most revealing part of Verstappen's performance was how quickly he established rhythm once he cleared turn 1. The analysis explains that Norris lost ground when he attempted to defend the early overtake into the first corner, which forced him into the escape area. Verstappen maintained the ideal racing line and exited with uninterrupted momentum. This gave Red Bull the clean air it needed to protect the tires and manage the aerodynamic platform of the car. Because the RB21 remained stable, it avoided the floor strikes that troubled McLaren. The difference between both cars was not only pace. It was operational consistency through the most sensitive phases of the lap. McLaren's engineers also faced the additional challenge of a poorly timed sequence of race events. Their fuel-saving window opened while Norris was under pressure from Russell, forcing him to compromise pace during a critical stretch. Meanwhile, the FIA report shows that both McLaren cars experienced porpoising that increased the vibration through the plank. The repeated oscillations accelerated were beyond what simulations predicted. In contrast, Verstappen was able to focus entirely on pace management because the RB21 never fell out of its operating window. When a team can maintain this level of stability for an entire Grand Prix, the technical margin for error widens dramatically.